It was raining lightly in Austin the day I got fired. I still remember how the raindrops hit the tinted windows of the conference room, blurring the skyline behind Dominic Blake's perfectly ironed silhouette. "Lucas," he said, not even looking at me. "We're heading in a bold new direction. We need adaptive, younger leadership. You've been with us a long time, 11 years. That's how long I'd poured everything into Metric Solutions. Built relationships, won hospitals over from fierce competitors, expanded the territory from 2 clinics to 12 regional hospital groups. And suddenly I was, what? Too old? Too loyal?" I didn't argue, didn't flinch, just stared at the man in the slick suit who'd never stepped foot into a hospital hallway in his life. He pushed a white envelope toward me. "This outlines your severance." They didn't just fire me. They dismissed everything I had built as if it never mattered. I packed my office slowly, framed photos of Clara and Evan, a half-finished model plane from Evan's school project, my notebook, and an external drive. Just habit, I told myself. But that drive contained over a decade of personal notes, alternate contact numbers, dinner preferences, even birthdays of procurement managers across half the state. Valerie from HR knocked gently. "Need help carrying that?" "Thanks," I said. "I've got it." On the elevator ride down, I stood alone. No farewells. No send-off emails. Just the sterile silence of corporate betrayal. Clara called just as I got to the parking lot. I answered, voice calm. "They did it?" she asked. I didn't reply. "Lucas, we'll be okay," she whispered. I wanted to believe her. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table in silence. Evan was out studying at a friend's house. Clara was upstairs resting. Her back had been acting up again. I poured myself a glass of red wine, opened my laptop, and read the termination clause in my contract again. The non-compete was soft. 1 year. Only if I left voluntarily. I hadn't. They opened the door. I just had to decide whether to walk away or walk back through it with fire in my hands. My phone buzzed. Trinity Medical. Renewal contract coming up. They hadn't heard the news yet. Neither had Riverside Health or Novacare. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I called Marcus, an old college buddy turned corporate lawyer. "I just want to know if they can legally stop me," I said. "From working? No. From talking? Also no. But they'll try to intimidate your clients. Let them." I didn't reach out to anyone that night. But the next morning, I made 3 quiet calls. "Just letting you know, I'm no longer with Metrics." "What happened?" Trinity's director asked. "New leadership. New vision. I wasn't part of it." They didn't ask more, but I could feel the temperature shift. By the end of the day, 2 of those 3 clients had terminated their renewal discussions with Metrics. One of them called me again that night. "Lucas, we want you. Wherever you go, let us know." In the following week, 5 more hospitals contacted me. Not because I chased them, but because word spread fast in this industry. Trust is rare. And when you lose the face that earned it, panic follows. Metrics scrambled. Dominic sent a vaguely threatening email about proprietary information and ethical transitions. I ignored it. On the 10th day, I met again with Jennifer Alston, COO of Valenbridge Technologies. A smaller competitor, but sharper. The meeting was set after a short call we had the night before. No pitch. No offer. Just her saying, "If you're ready to rebuild something the right way, we'll clear the path for you." It wasn't a job. It was a door. And this time, I was the one walking through it. They didn't offer me a role. They gave me the room to rewrite the rules. The morning after I got fired, Austin looked clearer. The rain had stopped, but a strange calmness hung in the air, the kind that settles right before a storm. Clara made coffee like usual, her back braced with a heating pad. She didn't ask what I planned to do. She didn't need to. I opened my personal laptop, not the company one now boxed in the hallway, and reviewed something I hadn't looked at in years. My own contacts list. Over 200 names. Procurement managers, COOs, regional health directors. Each name tied not just to a contract, but to stories, dinners, hospital visits, late-night emergencies. People didn't sign with Medarix because of the logo. They signed because they knew me. They let me go, but forgot I was the reason the doors stayed open. At 10:13 a.m., I sent 3 texts. Simple. Just a heads up. I'm no longer with Medarix as of yesterday. If you're available for a quick chat this week, let me know. I hit send and waited. Clara came into the room, handed me a sandwich. You look calm, she said. I am. At 11:42 a.m., Trinity Medical responded. Wait, what? Who's handling our contract now? I didn't answer right away. 12:17 p.m. Riverside Health. Need to talk. Urgent. 1:02 p.m. Novacare. Do we continue with Medarix or are you setting up shop? I hadn't pitched anyone, but I wasn't the one making the first move anymore. At 2 p.m., I drove to an old bar where I used to take clients back when Medarix was still small. Marcus, my college friend turned lawyer, was already at the corner booth. They've fired the soul of their sales division, he said before I even sat down. Is that a legal diagnosis? I asked, smirking. He slid a folder toward me. Employment law diagnosis. You're free. Just don't steal files or use their brand. I don't need to. The clients are already calling. Marcus leaned back, eyes gleaming. That, my friend, is leverage. That evening, I set my phone to silent and wrote a list. Not of clients, but of values. Trust, clarity, no politics. Client first, always. If I returned, it wouldn't be to rebuild Medarix under a new name. It'd be to build something better from the start. Valenbridge hadn't reached out yet, but I knew the industry. And I knew Jennifer Alston, their COO. She'd once told me over drinks at a medical expo, if you ever leave Medarix, don't call anyone else first. So I didn't. At 9:47 p.m., I called her. No pitch. Just, hey Jen, I think it's time. She responded in under 10 seconds. Let's talk tomorrow. I already heard what happened. I've cleared my morning. The next day, we met in a corner cafe near downtown. Jen came in without pretense. No suits, no assistants, just a notepad and a quiet smile. Here's what I'm thinking, she said. You build a division. Your way, your rules, autonomy, no hand-holding. And if the numbers match what I've seen over the last 5 years, we talk equity in 18 months. That's all I needed to hear. Within 48 hours, I'd signed an NDA and a preliminary consulting agreement. Not to poach, not to recruit, just to build a new outreach strategy. Meanwhile, Medarix was spinning. Alicia Winters, their shiny new MBA, was emailing clients with phrases like seamless transition and future-forward vision. My phone lit up with screenshots from old clients. Who is this woman? Why does she think she knows our procurement cycle? Lucas, is this supposed to replace you? I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Sometimes you win by saying nothing and letting the silence speak louder. 3 days into the chaos, Jen called me at 6:03 a.m. I need a list of clients you think will move, not who you want, who you know will follow. I sent her 12 names. Top of the list, Trinity, Riverside, Novacare. Later that afternoon, she sent back a simple message. You get green light. Build your team. Make the calls. That night, I called Natalie, my old assistant, now working freelance. I need someone I trust, not for scheduling, for execution. She laughed. You had me at trust. When do we start? This wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering what I was worth before they tried to erase me. By the end of the second week, I had done nothing, and everything was already changing. I hadn't called a single client to convince them to switch. I hadn't posted any dramatic farewell on LinkedIn. I hadn't spoken a word about Medarix publicly, but hospitals were calling. My name was being whispered in boardrooms, passed along in secure group chats, and mentioned at vendor meetings. Not as gossip, as a question. Is Lucas taking clients? Is he starting something? Do we follow? The most dangerous move isn't loud. It's quiet. So quiet it makes the walls listen. On Tuesday morning, I received a message from Trinity Medical. We've just canceled our renewal with Metrix. The rep they sent didn't know anything about our ordering structure. Let us know where to redirect our business. No discussion. No negotiation. Just done. Riverside Health followed within hours. NovaCare's procurement officer sent me a screenshot of Alicia's email pitch, captioned, "She thought our hospital was a rehab center. It wasn't even close. They didn't lose clients. They shattered trust. And trust never comes back in pieces." Jen and I spoke that afternoon. "You were right," she said. "It's happening faster than I expected." She approved the team budget and I brought Natalie on board officially. "I've got your back," she said. Settling into the temporary office Valenbridge had prepped for us in downtown Austin. "And you should know something." I raised an eyebrow. "Dominic? He's panicking. Word is, he had no idea you'd take even one client. Metrix thought you were too ethical to retaliate." I laughed. "This isn't retaliation. What is it then?" "Correction." By Friday, we had formal commitments from 7 former clients totaling $5.8 million in annual contracts. I hadn't promised discounts. I hadn't thrown shade. I hadn't offered gimmicks. I just reminded them what real service felt like. That weekend, I got a call from Everett Stanton, the CEO of Metrix. I let it go to voicemail. "Lucas, we need to talk. We've seen some movement and it's getting challenging. Let's connect. Just you and me." I didn't return the call. Instead, I called Marcus, my lawyer. "I think it's time to make things official," I said. "We registered a new division under Valenbridge, Precision Hospital Partnerships, with one clause, profit sharing for all client-facing staff." Natalie nearly cried when I told her. This wasn't just about building back. It was about building better for everyone who had ever been left behind. On Monday morning, an email from Metrix Legal landed in my inbox. "Reminder of your non-solicitation and confidentiality obligations." I forwarded it to Marcus. He replied with one sentence. "They're bluffing." I smiled and went back to drafting the welcome packets for incoming clients. At noon, Natalie burst into my office. "You need to see this," she said, holding up her phone. A Reddit thread titled, "Anyone else ditching Metrix after Lucas Tran got canned?" had gone viral in the medical procurement world. Comments poured in. "Yep, he was the only reason we stuck around. New reps don't know crap. Lucas equals trust. Period. They tried to silence my name. The industry turned it into a rallying cry." That evening, Trinity's CFO sent me a message. "By the way, Alicia tried calling. We told her we're not interested." Riverside sent a signed LOI. NovaCare scheduled onboarding with Natalie. And 3 new clients I'd never worked with before reached out, saying, "We heard you're building something different. Can we get in early?" By Wednesday, we'd crossed $8.1 million in commitments. Metrix announced internal restructuring. Dominic Blake? Nowhere to be found on the leadership page. Everett sent a second voicemail. "Please call me back. We're open to discussing consulting, transition help, something." I didn't reply, not out of pettiness, out of principle. They'd had 11 years to value me. Now they wanted to buy back what they discarded. Too late. You can't buy back loyalty after auctioning off trust. It started with a text from Natalie at 7:13 a.m. "We need to talk. Privately." I called her instantly. "I got a message last night from someone still inside Metrix," she said, voice low. "They wanted to stay anonymous, but they sent me documents." "What kind of documents?" "Meeting minutes, internal decks, and something labeled Transition Protocol, Q4 Strategy." "Lucas, they planned this. They didn't just fire me. They engineered my removal like a corporate heist." Natalie forwarded the files. The first slide hit like a freight train. Objective: transition legacy managed accounts to institutional model by Q4 to support acquisition terms with Everwin Capital. My name wasn't mentioned, but phrases like relationship-centric risk factors and account concentration mitigation told the whole story. They weren't firing me because I wasn't performing. They were firing me because I was irreplaceable. And irreplaceable is unscalable when you're trying to sell a company. They needed me gone, not because I failed, but because I succeeded too well to fit their exit strategy. I stared at the screen in silence, then opened another file, a chart labeled Client Transition Risk Assessment. Trinity, Novacare, Riverside, Henderson, Carlton. Every client I'd built over a decade was color-coded by sensitivity to rep change. Every one of them labeled high risk. Every one of them had already left. I wasn't just an employee they'd discarded. I was the foundation they had quietly tried to replace. And they were realizing now, far too late, that you can't rip out the foundation and expect the house to stand. I called Marcus and sent him the files. "This changes things," he said. "How?" "If they push legal action, this becomes Exhibit A. It proves malicious termination tied to asset prepping. You didn't poach. They provoked the collapse. So they can't touch me? Not unless they want the whole industry to see how they treat their rainmakers." 2 hours later, Jen called me. "Lucas," she said, "I just got word. Everwin has pulled their offer." "What?" "They got spooked when our client conversions leaked. They realized Metrix's value was tied too heavily to relationships they no longer controlled." I exhaled slowly. "So the deal's dead. Completely." They didn't just lose the deal. They lost the illusion that they were ever the value. At noon, I met Jen in person. She slid a folder across the table. "Updated equity proposal. We're making you co-head of the entire regional operations group." I flipped through the pages. It was real. Ownership, influence, legacy. All the things I'd been denied by the people who saw me as a liability. "You earned this," Jen said. I nodded once. "No shortcuts," I said. "We build it right. And we never treat anyone like they're disposable." That evening, Natalie texted again. "There's more." She sent a voicemail recording. It was Everett, talking to someone on speaker, probably legal. "We never should have let Blake run this. He said it would be clean. Now we're hemorrhaging clients and goodwill. It's not even about Lucas anymore. It's about the damn message this sends to the market. They thought they were removing a problem. They accidentally created a legend." I didn't smile, didn't feel glee, just clarity. Metrix had tried to package trust as a commodity, and the market was rejecting that repackaging violently. Later that night, as I reviewed the final onboarding documents for 2 more incoming clients, I opened a folder from Natalie labeled Alicia, Exit Interview Notes. I almost didn't read it, but curiosity won. It wasn't long. I wasn't ready. I was placed in a role I didn't earn, thrown into relationships I didn't build. I don't blame Lucas. I blame the people who thought he was replaceable. Even my so-called replacement knew the truth. They hadn't fired a sales rep. They'd severed the heart of their business. That weekend, I drove past the Metrix downtown office. The lights were dim, the parking lot half full. I didn't stop, didn't gloat, but I did whisper something, just to myself, as the building faded behind me. "You built a company on relationships, then tried to cut out the people who made them real. Now watch what happens next." 3 months after Metrix fired me, I stood on the main stage at the National Medical Procurement Summit in San Diego. The ballroom was a soft blur of navy suits, name tags, and tablet screens. Industry giants, analysts, competitors, vendors, and somewhere in the 3rd row, just left of center, sat Everett Stanton, the same man who hadn't looked up from his phone the day I left the company. The irony? I wasn't even here to speak about Metrix. Not directly. My panel was titled, Personalization in Procurement, When Trust Outweighs Price. I didn't need to name names. The entire room already knew the subtext. Sometimes you don't bury the past. You just shine enough light to let it bury itself. The moderator asked me a softball opener. What's the biggest mistake companies make in today's procurement ecosystem? I didn't blink. They confuse brand loyalty with relationship loyalty, I said. They assume a signed contract means a permanent partnership. Doesn't. Relationships are portable. Clients aren't loyal to logos. They're loyal to people who solve problems. Heads nodded. Everett looked up. I didn't say his name, but his silence said everything. I presented my segment with numbers, not bitterness. 92% client retention across the first 3 months at Valenbridge. $8.7 million in recommitted contracts. 27% improvement in procurement efficiency. 19-point rise in client satisfaction. Then I showed before and after case studies. Same clients, same product category. Drastically better results when the right relationship was preserved. Still no names, no accusations, just evidence and silence, because the facts didn't just speak, they roared. After the panel, I stepped off stage to a crowd of handshakes. A regional director from Horizon Labs said, "You just said what we've all been thinking, but we're too polite to say." An old vendor whispered, "You didn't burn them. You lit the whole model on fire." This wasn't revenge. This was revelation. That afternoon, I got a text from Natalie. "You should check LinkedIn. Metrics just announced leadership restructuring. Everett is stepping down." I blinked, not surprised, just affirmed. Then came another message. Anonymous. "You were never the weak link. You were the system holding it all together." I didn't reply, but I saved it. Later that evening, in a quiet corner of the hotel bar, I spotted Alicia Winters, the woman who was supposed to replace me. She walked over hesitantly. "Lucas, I wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For not blaming me. I wasn't ready. They set me up to fail." "You didn't gloat. You just rebuilt." I nodded. "You're not the enemy, Alicia. The system was. Sometimes the people they use to replace you end up becoming witnesses to your vindication." As I left the bar, Jen called. "We just crossed $10 million in retained and new contracts," she said. "And a board member wants to nominate you for EVP. Tell them I'll consider it," I said. "But only if I get to keep choosing my team. No empire building. Just real work." "Exactly why they want you," Jen replied. Before heading to bed, I checked my email. Subject line, "Coffee? No agenda, just me. Everett." I didn't open it. Not out of spite. Out of peace. Not all battles end in explosions. Some end in silence that echoes louder than any war cry. 1 year to the day after I was fired, I signed the final partnership documents with Valenbridge Technologies. The numbers were staggering. $20 million in annual portfolio value. 17 former Metrics clients. 8 new institutions. 34% year-over-year growth. And most importantly, 0 employee turnover. I closed the folder and looked out the window of my new office in downtown Austin. Same skyline, different man. They tried to erase me. Instead, I rewrote the map. Clara walked in holding 2 coffees. "Signed and official?" she asked. "Signed and official." She smiled, set the coffee down, and sat across from me. "You don't look as happy as I expected." I paused, searching for the right words. "I am," I said, "just thinking." "About what?" "About not repeating their mistakes." Later that day, I approved 3 new hires, each with a built-in profit-sharing agreement, mentorship program, and zero-compete clause. No one here would ever feel disposable. Natalie peeked in around 3 p.m. We hit the target early, and Travis just sent another referral. I smiled. "That guy doesn't stop." "Neither do you," I chuckled. "Yeah, but I do nap occasionally." At 5:12 p.m., my assistant handed me an envelope. No return address. Handwritten. Inside was a note. "Lucas, you were right. I put transaction above relationship. Cost the company everything. If you're ever willing to meet for coffee, I'd appreciate the chance to apologize in person. Everett." I folded the note and placed it in my drawer. Maybe someday. Not yet. Some apologies aren't meant to be refused. Just delayed until you've truly moved on. That evening, Clara and I drove to Evan's school. He was performing in his jazz band's spring recital. I'd missed 3 of them in the Metrics years. This time, I sat front row. As he played, I leaned back and let the music fill the room. No deadlines, no sales targets, no buried rage, just rhythm, breath, and light. After the show, Evan handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a frame with a parchment-style quote, "The best revenge is massive success." I smiled. "I figured it was time to stop saying it and actually live it," he said. "The last word doesn't always come from your mouth. Sometimes it's in how you live." A week later, I accepted an invite to a small lunch with former Metrix clients. We laughed, shared stories, made plans. Not once did we talk about Everett, Dominic, or the past, because it no longer lived here. My calendar buzzed with a final notification for the day. Lunch with Everett Stanton, confirm or decline. I stared at it, then hit snooze. Not no, not yes, just not today. Victory isn't walking back to show them you won. It's walking forward without needing to.